Welcome back to the channel, you beautiful people. Today, I've got a very serious issue that I need to discuss with the Star Wars fandom. If you're a fan of Star Wars or know any people who are fans of Star Wars, I want to see you in the comments. Send this to your Star Wars friends. We need to get to the bottom of how fans feel about this issue. Recently, in the new Book of Boba Fett show, they premiered the live-action version of Cad Bane for the very first time. This bounty hunter was a super popular character in the Clone Wars TV show and then later reappeared in Bad Batch earlier last year. And as cool of a character that he is, I never really thought that we would actually see him come to the big screen in a live-action movie or TV show. So when me and every other fan saw him meander on screen from the distance with the cowboy hat and the boots and the long jacket, I think it's pretty safe to say that we all lost our minds. And don't get me wrong, I'm so thankful that they brought this character to live action, but when you lift up the brim of his hat and we get to see his face for the very first time, it wasn't what I expected. I knew who it was and I was freaking out, but the other half of me was asking, why does he look so different? Why does he have a big poofy nose and look like a Who from Whoville? Why is he so pale? Why are his teeth so big?
And what big ears you have.
All the better to hear your many criticisms.
I had all these questions come to my head, critiquing the look and reveal of the new character into live action, but I was watching with a friend who hadn't seen the Clone Wars but knew of the character, and they absolutely loved him and had no problem with him whatsoever. So I kept my critique to myself, thinking that I was just being overcritical. Maybe this was their way of aging this character. Maybe they wanted to keep as much as possible physical effects instead of digital effects. But if you put the live action Cad Bane side by side with his portrayal in Clone Wars, they look extremely different. Not to mention the color of the skin, but also the big bright shiny teeth. The position of his mouth is much higher, and his face. The shape of his head is much less elongated and more human-like. They also gave him a tinier hat, and his nose is poofy, like the actor's nose is squashed behind some uncomfortable prosthetics, to say the least. And no disrespect to the actor, when Jim Carrey played the Grinch, it took him 8.5 hours to get the full bodysuit and makeup put on, which is literal torture at that point. I have all the respect in the world for the actors that go through this, but what I'm trying to say and get past is the decision to stay completely physical versus using the physical prosthetics as well as altering it digitally to look closer to what we're used to what the character has been established to look like. In this video, I want to talk to you about a fellow creator, Cinematic Captures, who is a digital VFX artist and actually took the time to edit the current version of Cad Bane to look more like the Clone Wars depiction of Cad Bane that we all know and love. And mind you, he's a one-person team that did this in just 3 days after the episode aired. He used the original Duros that were in Mos Eisley Cantina and A New Hope, as well as the original depiction of Cad Bane from the Clone Wars to create a version of the live-action Cad Bane that is much closer to what we thought he would look like. He rearranged the face so the structure is taller and more slender. He moved the mouth downwards, closer to the chin. He even made the hat wider, like the original, which is way cooler by the way. And of course, he posted it to Twitter and set a new record for the most amount of Star Wars hate in as little time as possible. Not to mention, another artist reworked the character into the masterpiece that is known as Little Lad Bane. I almost think they should have went with this design as it would appeal to more viewers, particularly if they were Ewoks or Jawas. You could say that they would be his target demographic. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy the video, please hit that like button to help it in the algorithm and subscribe to help us get to 300,000. As soon as we hit 300K, we're going to be giving away a bunch of lightsabers to the local elementary school and see who is the ultimate Master Jedi. And while you're at it, turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next video. I've got one coming out on Kenobi soon, which you're not going to want to miss. Now, I know the stylistic versions of the characters in Clone Wars won't translate backwards into live action versions of the characters, but I think that's a little different. We've seen these characters established in a different medium already. They've already appeared in the live action movies, and the Clone Wars is a depiction of the original characters. With Cad Bane, he was never in any live action movies. He only appeared in the Clone Wars. That was the first version of his character that we all knew and loved, so any live action versions, i.e. this one, should be a depiction of the character in Clone Wars. Unlike the original characters in Clone Wars that are based on the live action characters that came before them, Cad Bane in live action is based on his cartoon depiction. That being said, I think it's totally reasonable to expect him to resemble his look from Clone Wars, or at least some of his more distinct features, especially in his face a little bit. Now, while a lot of people were unhappy with Cad Bane's first appearance in the show and appreciated seeing a quick look at what he might look like if it was modeled closer to Clone Wars character, there was a lot of people who hated the thought of even attempting to change it, which I think is completely absurd. The artist here doesn't deserve any amount of hate for expressing his abilities and basically creating fan art to imagine something based on how the character was originally introduced. It's a suggestion and an expression of creative freedom based on the original established look of the character. In fact, we should be encouraging people to look at the details and be creative with Star Wars. Just look at Luke Skywalker from Mando Season 2. As cool as it was to see him again, we can all agree that it just looked a little bit off. It's like when you're trying to do something online and for some reason you just don't have a VPN protecting your information, it's completely off. There's no reason you shouldn't be using someone like Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of today's video, to protect yourself and all your personal information while you're online. Surfshark's sole purpose for existing is to help keep you safe and protect all your personal information while you're online. When any of your devices connect to the internet while using Surfshark, all your information is now protected with encryption to prevent anyone who shouldn't be getting your data from getting your data. Not only is it a great form of online protection, but it also lets you virtually travel the world with just the tap of your finger. If you live in the US and you're trying to access some movies or TV shows that we don't have on certain streaming services, all you have to do is change your IP address with Surfshark to whatever country the show or movie is available in, and boom, you're back to watching your favorite show. Surfshark has over 3,200 different servers in 65 different countries, and it works on Windows, Mac, Android, and iPhone. Any device that you need protected, they've got you covered. And right now, they're running a special offer where you can go to surfshark.com and enter promo code MichaelJ for 83% off your subscription and get an extra 3 months for free. Head over now to try them out today, and now that we're all protected, let's get back to the video. Since Luke Skywalker was looking a little off the first time around, a fellow creator who goes by the name Shamook came to the rescue as he has multiple times before and deep-faked young Mark Hamill's face onto the Luke Skywalker that they put in the Mando finale and somehow made it look 10 times better. I'm sure you've seen the video, but Disney ended up hiring him into the Lucasfilm visual effects department, and he is a huge reason and contributor to why Luke Skywalker looks 10 times better in the Book of Boba Fett than he did when we first saw him reimagined. Remember when the Justice League came out and Henry Cavill still had the mustache that they had to edit out for the movie and it looked really freaky? He came out of the bushes and fixed that too. His work is incredible. These are artists expressing their creative freedom on something they're passionate about. It shouldn't be met with hate from anyone. If anything, like I said before, we should be supporting the people who are holding the big studios to the high bar they should be at. And I know that both of these artists that have made edits are super happy to see the characters on the big screen, and they just want to see what it would look like if they were slightly different, or if it was made better in Luke's case. It's sad that in this day and age, you have to go back and reiterate 100 times what your intentions were because people are hating and assuming your motives are different, or articles are twisting your words just to make a story. Like honestly, what do you think of live action Cad Bane? Have you watched Clone Wars before? Tell me in the comments if you've seen Cad Bane in Clone Wars or Bad Batch, and then also tell me what you think of his look in the show. I want to see if there's any correlation between the two. Take for instance, Ahsoka. Comments were made about how she looks different in live action than she does in the Clone Wars. Her tails were longer, and when translated to live action for the first time, they just weren't able to replicate the length of her tails with prosthetics and still have her be able to do the stunts and whatnot. And they addressed that they're going to be looking into ways to lengthen them back to how they should be in the future. But right now, they're just not able to do so with the time and money that they have. But that's just not the case with Cad Bane. Here is a one-person edit 3 days after the character has been released that, in my opinion, looks incredibly well done, even if it's just a what-if edit at how he used to look in the Clone Wars. Personally, I love the darker blue color, and I miss seeing it from Clone Wars. But honestly, the biggest feature in question is the mouth position. This is not the first time we've seen Duros in Star Wars. They were in the very first movie with physical prosthetics, and they looked more like a Duro than Cad Bane does 45 years later. In the cantina scene on Mos Eisley, there was 2 Duros at a table which were both made of physical prosthetics that were put over the actors' heads. Now, while these characters didn't talk, this is an accurate representation of what Duros should look like in live-action Star Wars. And again, put side by side with Cad Bane here, and they just don't look as similar as many hoped they would, and even closer to that is the Neimoidians. These look very similar to Duros, and in episode 1 and 3 they had a lot of talking moments. They had a lot of lines in which actors in physical prosthetics and masks would move their lips and say their lines. The lip movements are much more restricted though. There's basically up and down and a little bit of left and right flexing, as you can see. Not exactly as much detail as you would like for all those close-up shots that they did, and I get that we've already seen Cad Bane in the Clone Wars with really crisp lip movement, and if they were going to use prosthetics like this for the show, we wouldn't get that crisp detailed lip movement if a headpiece were over an actor that was closer to a Duro. But if we really want the lip movement and to stay closer to the original look of a Duro, we can just slide a few features over, make his face a little more elongated and move his mouth down and get rid of the big poofy Whoville nose, and boom, back to his original look. What Cinematic Captures did adjusting the Cad Bane look and editing it to how the Clone Wars depicted him is completely in the right. The issue comes into frame when the articles start being published saying that a Star Wars fan fixed the character's design, implying that he did it because the show did it wrong and he's doing it the right way, how it should be. He never once meant for it to come across like that, and it became this huge ordeal that garnered way too much attention to the point where he had to reiterate on every platform how he did it for fun and he wasn't trying to infringe on the creators of the show, and he wasn't implying they did it in a wrong way. There was so much backlash that the article actually was retitled, replacing fixed with adjusted, thank goodness. It just sucks to see a creator get flack over the publishing site's misrepresentation of the creator's intentions, especially just for views and clicks. Personally, I think the rework was very tasteful and it came out extremely well. And I'm sure the look that they ended up using in the show went through many different people and got lots of different approval, and I'm sure they went through a bunch of different iterations to land with what they've got. I really like the original look of Cad Bane though. I want to say if something's not broken, don't try to fix it. And I don't think the argument of the changes being CGI and the original is prosthetics has any sort of ground here. The show doesn't claim to be 100% prosthetics. A lot of Star Wars in general is very physical effects, which I love and I'm a huge fan of. But I just don't think that using visual effects to aid bringing a character to life more accurately would make anyone bat an eye, especially when it's combined with physical prosthetics. But at the same time, I try to be very open to new things or things that are different from how I see them. For instance, this character is 25 years older than the last time we saw him in Bad Batch. We've never seen a Duro age before, especially on the sands of Tatooine. Of course he's going to look different. So that's enough to explain the change in color, but I think moving his mouth slightly downward wouldn't hurt anyone, as well as squishing the face in slightly and making the nose less poofy, but I think the color was definitely a stylistic choice that we'll let slide. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have one question for you. I will see you in the next video, but until then, who are we?
It doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan.